My 50-year-old widowed sister-in-law was often seen by my younger brother taking a bath. My sister-in-law knew very well that my brother secretly watched her. Many times I had seen my younger brother sleeping with my sister-in-law. That day, it reached its limit when my sister-in-law was sitting at my younger brother's feet. Me and my brother Shawis used to return from school and college at intervals of an hour, and often at that time, my sister-in-law would be busy in prayers, and Shawis would often bring lunch from outside. I would cook dinner myself. At that age, it was not acceptable to ask my sister-in-law to do housework because we were already very depressed under my sister-in-law's kindness. After the death of our parents, she had taken over the responsibility of raising us, and even after her husband left her, she did not remarry. Such a great sacrifice she had made for both of us, and we were also very close to my brother-in-law. She used to stay up all night sewing for our education and training, and she raised us. Now I was 18 years old and Shawis was 16 or 14 years old, and my sister-in-law had to take care of her brother-in-law and both of us, but she often fell into a deep sleep at night, and coincidentally, last night I was in Gunwar's house. So I saw all that strange scene and a strange fear started to come in my heart, and the next day I again started avoiding sleeping under the guise of spying, but suddenly Mir Asr started to get dizzy and Suk and I started to feel sleepy, and in a short while I fell asleep and did not study at all, and I woke up from my sleep early in the morning with the sound of the alarm and sat down at 8 o'clock and hurriedly went to the kitchen, and while making the sound of breakfast I was again respectfully standing next to Chavez Bobby, and as soon as Bobby finished her duties she read and blew on both of us, and again Bobby started praying for Chavez. We both started talking to Bobby and went to our respective schools and colleges, and coincidentally that same day I went home in a hurry to come home, so suddenly my eyes were wide open when the whole house was open and I kept calling Bobby Bobby, but Bobby was nowhere to be seen, and again something unpleasant and strange happened. I could hear the poor voices coming from Chavez's room. I immediately ran towards it and listened by putting my ear to the door. Hearing the same words of Bobby and strange, low voices, I sat down holding my head. This was the second time I had felt all this, but at that time I was in college and Chavez was in school, but isn't Chavez a place for school? In this house, I had gone out of the house with Bobby and sat in the park. My mind started thinking about Bobby and Chavez without knowing what, and I was getting confused in my own questions. At that moment, my eyes fell on the person walking in front of me who I could see coming from the front, but his face looked a little familiar to me. I immediately started chasing this person to clear my confusion and tried to stop him by shouting, but perhaps because he was too far away, my voice was not reaching him. Bobby had already told me. And Chavez's confusion was less. This new trouble had come to my throat, and in such a short time it was 1 o'clock and I started to go back to the house, so as soon as I reached the door, I was shocked. "You are coming from school so quickly with your school bag and in your uniform," and I smiled nervously and said, yes, today it was off early, but my heart was still restless. Maybe it was all mine or us, or really, what I felt. Chavez and I entered the house together, then he came. "Sister-in-law, come and wash your hands and face. Today I have cooked food, it is also to your liking. I will cook the food, you guys, come quickly." Me and Chavez came and sat there in no time, and both of us were not tired of praising sister-in-law while eating. The food was really very tasty, but sister-in-law, why did you bother at this age, while Chavez brings food with him every day? Chavez, hearing my words, became nervous and said, yes, why not, but sister-in-law, I had forbidden myself from going to school in the morning. I looked at my sister-in-law and she said with a smile, "Hey kids, sometimes I also feel like making something good for you guys with my own hands, and sometimes I get bored sitting at home." My sister-in-law patted my head and said, tears came to my eyes as soon as I saw their love. I remembered the many sacrifices they had made for us, and today, because of their sacrifice, we have become so courageous and capable, and we have become educated and qualified. I started to feel that perhaps I was thinking a lot wrong about my sister-in-law. At night, I received a call from my friend Sammy again. I was very happy. The joy of meeting her after such a long time started to stir in my heart again. My childhood friend Sammy, who had returned to the country after such a long time and was also very anxious to meet me, started asking me the way to my house to meet me. When I told her the next evening, referring to the park, to call me when I reach here, I will come from here. I will take you next to the famous park called Aladdin, which was known to everyone and could be easily reached. I had been happily planning my way to meet Sammy since morning. When suddenly, my sister-in-law saw this unexpected happiness on my face. "What is the matter? You look very happy today. I immediately informed my sister-in-law about Sammy's arrival, and she was also very happy. During those childhood days, the relations between our families were also very good. Sammy and I had a friendship that was already admirable. We wore the same clothes, shoes, played together, jumped, ate and drank, everything was connected to each other. But then his family had gone to another country and settled down. Sammy and I were separated from each other when we were 10 years old. Today, our happiness was renewed. Our childhood days were renewed. My sister-in-law had also started helping me with work. And as evening approached, my sister-in-law informed me that she had been calling for a long time. Go and bring him. I will see everything here. Today, Chavez was not at home either and I went to Aladdin Park alone to pick him up and in no time I saw Sammy whose eyes were searching for me everywhere. I tried to scare her by placing my hand on her shoulder from behind, but she turned around and immediately recognized me and started crying, hugging me and her childishness brought tears to my eyes. We both saw each other after such a long time, tears of joy were shining in our eyes and there were many things that we had to do. I held Sammy's hand and carried her belongings with me and started walking. In no time, while talking, we reached home where Bobby had already made all the preparations and Bobby had also hugged me as soon as she saw this. My dear Shabana Bobby, you have become so weak. It seems that you do not take care of your health at all. A few years ago, you were very beautiful and what you looked like then, Bobby said with tears in her eyes. I feel good about it. What do you do now that it is the time of these children? You people do whatever you want. We had made fun of Bobby as soon as we saw her depressed. In a short while, Chavez came from outside with tea and snacks. We were all having tea and snacks and were talking a lot and remembering those childhood days when we children used to have a lot of fun and make life difficult for people in our old neighborhood. Seema had come to stay at her relatives' house for some work for a while, but she had decided to stay at my place for 2 or 3 days against my will. Since she had come, Chavez and I have been very happy. A new guest had come to our house to entertain us. And while she was away here, Bobby had happily taken all the responsibility of the work in her hands and had told me to stay with Seema all the time. I had also taken college vacations for a few days, but I cooked food at home at night, which everyone ate, but I was a little sick. I couldn't eat in the bar and started to kiss Mickey. We both were awake till late at night and were talking about all the situations in each other's house when suddenly Simi said, "Man, well done to this woman who has made a great sacrifice for her mother and brother-in-law." I was thinking. He immediately said, "Man, Nada, I am talking about your sister-in-law, who could have married again if she had not seen her youth, but what she did for both of you is respectable. Man, otherwise, these are the same women we meet in families today." I said, "Yes, man, you are right. She is our mother's place. But there are some things that have been bothering me for the past few days. Man, Mirawal is very complicated." My eyes fell on Simi while we were talking. When did she fall asleep? She must have come from a journey. She must have been tired. Therefore, she must have fallen asleep due to exhaustion. But I kept thinking all night that suddenly I was about to lose my sight. As soon as the noise started again, I ran towards Chavez's room and suddenly I tried to pick out those words again but those faint strange sounds started shaking Mirawal. Maybe it was Bobby again. I slowly moved towards Bobby's room and Camille was on her bed and when the game started, there was only a crowd of mice as if someone had started sleeping but at that time no one was there. I had gone to Chavez's room again to listen while writing, but those words of Bobby were making me feel ashamed again and again but again I remembered all the kindnesses of Bobby so I ran to my room and started waiting for morning from the bed. At 6 in the morning I looked quietly from my room and Bobby had left Chavez's room again with his pocket full of tiredness and went to his room and lay down on the bed and lay down. It was clearly visible from the way her eyes were looking at her. Bobby must not have spent the whole night in peace, but she sneaked out of Chavez's room like this. At that time, I sat down with my heart in my hands, holding my head. At that time, I was startled by the sound of Sammy's hand. Who is it? Everyone has done something at once. What is the matter? Nahid, why has your face turned yellow like this? And what is the matter with you in this weather? It seems like you have just seen a ghost. No, it was just that I was starting to have a slight headache. So I was sitting there, saying, "Okay, come here." Sammy comforted me and massaged my head. I started to feel a little calm. And I fell asleep. This is what had made me take rest. And I fell asleep. But this match and the struggle started to make me restless inside. On one side, my 14-year-old limping Abai and on the other side, my 50-year-old sister-in-law, I finally believed in whom and looked up to whom, because in my eyes, the scene around my eyes was both guilty and sinful for me. But for how long will this sugar of mine last? I was feeling a little unwell the next day, and at that time I mentioned my condition and my anxiety to Sammy. He said, "Let's go for a walk in the park in the fresh air. Your heart will also beat faster and you will feel calm." I said yes to going with Sammy and I followed him. We were both sportsmen in the park. Everyone started asking me the reason for my anxiety. I said nervously, "What can I say, my friend? At this moment, my friends are standing on both sides of the boat I am in and I don't understand who to believe and who to doubt." "What do you mean? What is your belief and country and who is yours?" Sammy said, staring at me with questioning eyes. I had seen this man's face in front of some Japanese people before, and I immediately started running from there and calling out to him. I was running behind him, but the man was not stopping. Perhaps he was afraid of the sound of me following him. I started running away, but I was getting excited to catch this person and expose him. The person had already gone far ahead of me while running, and I was running while looking for a way to catch him. She also started running behind me because I don't know what has happened to this girl suddenly, and I was so worried that now I am alone with her and she won't run away. Sammy grabbed me and started shaking me. "What is the matter, Tawhid? Are you running like this in some tune, and who is that person you were calling with these words?" What would I have answered Sammy at that time? What would I have told him about the trouble I was going through at that time? I held Sammy's hand and immediately brought him back home, and after closing the doors, I was scared and was shaking badly. Everyone shook me again and asked me what happened. "What is the matter? I am not grateful for it. You have been so confused and nervous for a few days. What is the matter? Is everything okay?" I said, "Sammy, what should I tell you about the trouble I am going through? I know that, but you, please, make me a promise. Whatever I tell you, you will not mention it to anyone until I tell you." Simi had promised me. When I told her about this strange relationship between Shawiz and Bobby, she was also surprised. What kind of accusation am I making against them? It's not just about the country, it's not about Simi. Believe me, what I heard and felt in this closed room. And in the morning, Bobby's condition. I myself am surprised. How can these two, who are showing everyone the name of mother and son, do all this work in front of everyone? They both have been doing it all night in this closed room. And in Bobby's subdued words, she started telling Simi. Now Simi was also very angry. And had it ever happened that Bobby's sacrifices, and on the other hand, this unique feat of hers was also so young that she could prove her own brother-in-law wrong? But how is it possible? I wish your thoughts would be proven wrong, but I saw them in this state with my own eyes. And what is the connection between that person and the one you were running after in the park like crazy, and that goodness, how can I tell you at that time? Tell me, I want to go too. I won't let you get into trouble like this. That's why when I mentioned that person related to the park, he also lost consciousness, that after years, that person was also a dead person. But how now? Sammy and I had made a pact that very soon we would reveal the secret of this brother-in-law's exploits, and on the other hand, we would make a nawab out of this person's face. But the next morning, there was a loud knock on the door, and when the door was opened, everyone had gathered in the lounge of the house, and in a short time, the situation had completely changed when the police started raiding the house as soon as they arrived, and first took Shavia's name and then started searching the entire house. And after a short time, the ground gave way under our feet when the police she had beaten Shavia and taken her from the room to Calgary with us. On the other hand, Bobby had fainted and fainted after seeing all this. But the police had taken Shavia away suddenly due to a misunderstanding that Bobby could not bear at all and could not handle the two conditions. My child, Mir, had started living in this strange condition all night and all day. Her condition was getting worse day by day. On the other hand, the police were not at all ready to release Shavia. There was some evidence against her in the household belongings that were found in her room, and her younger brother Nabil was getting very difficult. On the other hand, it was also very difficult to handle Bajabi. It seemed that her condition was getting worse day by day. We were trembling with fear. On the one hand, there was that doubt in my mind, and on the other hand, this matter which was completely contrary to what I had thought. The day Bobby's condition reached its peak, it started getting worse, and under compulsion, he was immediately shifted to the hospital. When we saw some of his test reports, Sammy and I were in tears. As we were thinking, the matter had become even worse because at that time, Bobby was my own young brother-in-law. As soon as Sammy and I saw Bobby's reports in the hospital and talked to the doctor, we immediately came to the jail with a request to meet Shawiz and were waiting for answers to thousands of questions. My anger was pouring out on Shawiz, asking why and on whose orders he did all this when he was only 14 years old at that time and I was doing such a big thing. Why? I was screaming and asking him questions, but there was a strange sadness and fear in his eyes and he was completely silent. He was not willing to answer any of our questions. As soon as I saw his face, I brought him back home with difficulty and said, maybe the matter will be completely the opposite. We will never be able to face the middle with this force. We will immediately carry out our plan, perhaps we will get some help from this. Hearing Sammy's words, I came to my senses and thought that Sammy was absolutely right. And from that day on, we and I used to take turns walking in the park every day and we would wait for the same person again. After 10 days, our eyes had caught sight of this familiar person from afar. This time Sammy also started coming into the circle of the country with this person because she was also familiar with this person. He could not recognize either of us at that time. As soon as we went in front of him, we tried to surround him with our arms and told him with gestures that he knew this thing. I extended my hand and presented the thing in front of his eyes. He immediately rushed in and put the poem in his pocket and started giving me a lot of money in return. Sammy said, not now, but we have a lot of such things. If you come with us, we can give you because all this is. It was none of our business, but the man had gone with us on our request, and he had brought him to the hospital first under the pretext of sex, and pointing to his sister-in-law who was lying in the ICU, asked, what is all this and why? He was shocked to see Baja. He was shocked when we both introduced him to our true identity. He was surprised without blinking an eye as soon as we saw him and immediately started shaking hands. I was very nervous and worried about him. I was well aware of this old habit. In a short time, I made him a fake beard and mustache. I said to him, it's strange that you couldn't fulfill your duty as a husband and brother and you are walking around in public like this. It's a pity that you should have died instead of your parents. How can you be a shameless husband and a shameless brother? We couldn't even think about it. At that time, I myself had handed over the culprit to the police who had killed his parents. After her death, he abused her and drugged her all night long, making her addicted to drugs. He did all this out of revenge against his sister-in-law.